Hello. Hi. We're going to be real cuddly on this stage, so we can use this mic together.
Sounds good.
Welcome to our talk. Welcome to our talk. We're very excited you're all here.
This is what's going to happen.
This is what we're going to be talking about. We're not going to read this to you.
Just like prepare yourself in your bodies.
Yeah. We want to actually have time to talk about it. So, you know. This is Quinn Milton. Uses Z-er pronouns. We got a good overview already on what Z does.
And this is Sadia Bies, uses they, them pronouns. Also had an excellent introduction. Thank you very much.
This is the first photo of us LARPing together at the Wayfinder Experience. It's real cute. That's our son. He's a cute little cat.
So we're going to be talking about Event Horizon, which is that.
Yes.
Event Horizon LARP was founded by us and Ben Book-Schwartz, who is at this point leaving the company to pursue more European waters, which is very exciting for them. We do weekend to destination con LARP set in one galactic universe, taking place at different places and times in the galaxy and tackling different themes.
We also have expanded into running convention LARPs over the past year. So the first thing we want to talk about is experiential design, and specifically using technology for experience design.
This is the one of the things we like to do in our big LARPs. We like to bring in technology to supplement play without having the LARP depend on technology, because that will not work. Also, our location does not have cell service and has very little Wi-Fi, but we make it work. We use Discord. We have remote players who communicate using Discord and videos. We also try to have some big builds that are interactive props that use technology.
Yeah, so we're really focused as a sci-fi LARP on using technology for experience design, but we also want to talk a little bit about experience design in general. We think a lot about experience design as game designers when we're talking about writing the world background and character sheets, but really experience design encompasses all the decisions you're making as a designer. It also has to do with location and mechanics, and even the way that you introduce and talk about the things you've written really influence player experience.
So experience design is a design principle in the rest of the design world as well. Design is a lot about shaping our behaviors with ourselves, with each other, and with the spaces that we move through. So experience design in LARP is anything that might change behaviors that is different from analog life. Some examples of non-LARP experience design are touchscreens. We now know what this is, and this is. And we even sometimes see children doing this on actual photographs, trying to swipe them.
Also things like emojis, which expand the way that we are able to communicate emotionally online. It's something that we've added to design that allows us to have a new feature, a new way of interacting with each other.
And the last example is something that detracts and prevents you from behaving a certain way, which is hostile architecture.
Basically, hostile architecture are things designed to prevent certain activities, like benches that are designed so that people cannot sleep on them. You can design things to encourage behaviors and add new modes of communication, and also design things to limit other behaviors.
So, LARP is great. One of the things we want to talk about quickly, only going to touch on it here. If you want to learn more about this, you can come to the Tech and LARP panel. We'll be giving a whole other presentation about it. But recently, in our last LARP, this April 20th, we had some real science happen at our LARP, which is awesome for science fiction. We collaborated with the Social and Emotional Technology Lab from UC Santa Cruz. They built us tech wearables for our augments, which are our cyborg characters.
let's hit the video to explain it.
Oh yeah, that's Maya.
That's Maya. She's great. She was
Prototype.
a prototype of the set lab design. The technology allowed us to add new ways for players to interact in character. There was these shoulder pieces that lit up. It allowed characters to go into overload, where their technology would malfunction on random timers, and then the character would be unable to function like that. But it also had things where there was a panel on the back of the neck, where if you gently rubbed someone else's panel, it would bring them out of overload. And we also had hacking, so someone could also go punch numbers into your back and send you into overload.
So this type of touch was designed for in-game and given a different context, and the Set Lab is going to be doing research on what they observed. This is them in character, the lab coats. They were in our game in character, documenting and doing research, and we're really excited to see what comes from that. Very, very quickly, Quinn will talk more about this in the technology panel. We had some big technological builds, collaborations with Angelo Taylor, Maya Ziv, and myself. This is an image of the obelisk, which was really plot important in our first game. I was in there playing an ancient AI, and a lot of the plot was opening that up over the course of the weekend. There's me in it, cutting off someone's face. It was a puzzle that players could interact with. Similarly, for our recent game, we had 3 nodes, which were these, which were both physical and digital video game puzzles that people had to try to take control over the 3 nodes in the final conflict for our weekend. Victory! Anyway, that's enough about tech experience design.
We're gonna get to queer experience design.
So in our communities, something that we started about 6 or 7 years ago, is we started to use pronouns in our introduction circles. So we'd have a circle, everyone goes around, says their name, says something else. You've probably done something like this. What we found when we started this is the way that we presented pronouns affected the way that people understood them and related to them. So at first we were like, all right, everyone, welcome to the LARP. We're gonna go around, you can say your name, you can say your pronouns if you want to, and also tell us what you had for breakfast. So we had people go around. Some people were confused at first because they didn't know what pronouns were, which happens. And what we found is that cisgender, or people whose gender presentation very much aligned with what people assumed, did not give their pronouns. So we had our trans, gender nonconforming, and gender and non-binary participants having to kind of like, and my pronouns. So what we did is a tiny tweak, is we said, please say your name and your pronouns, and we have breakfast. And I'll set the example right now.
Hi, my name is Sadia. My pronouns are they, them.
What did you have for breakfast, Sadia?
A bagel. Oh, cool, I'll talk now. All right, yeah, so it was just, part of it was really our staff leading by example and having even our cis and like really obviously gender presenting staff members also always give the example of introducing themselves with their pronouns. And what we found is, especially working in summer camps with a lot of kids who didn't know how pronouns worked, they picked up on it way faster. They started introducing themselves with their pronouns, and it made our non-binary and trans and gender non-conforming kids way less put upon.
Also, several years later, we noticed that there were way more people using different pronouns, experimenting, and also identifying their gender in different ways. It's really cool. This is something that has happened in society over the past basically 5 years, is now we understand that there are different pronouns and genders. This is a social script that was designed for, in our introductions, that has led to changes. So,
we're about to tell you how sci-fi is gay, how transhumanism is trans, and you need to be including these things in your sci-fi LARP. or your LARP is going to be really dated.
We are currently in the middle of a gender and sexuality revolution. This is not a fad, this is not a tweak, this is something that is going on, it is a change in our society, and it is awesome. There are statistics that show us that way more people are coming out and identifying themselves as being LGBTQIA, etc. It's really cool. A lot of it is us millennials. We are twice as likely to be queer. Good job, us. And also, like we just said, people in the cultural consciousness now know that non-binary people, we're here, it's a thing, awesome.
Cool. So sci-fi is all about imagining new futures. And if you're looking at where we are right now, we are entering a pretty queer future. If you're looking at sci-fi from the past, not all of it is envisioning the future as being this queer. But as more and more identities become more, have more mainstream knowledge about them, as more and more people come out as queer, as more and more types of queerness enter the public consciousness, I think it's pretty silly to not think that that trend is going to continue into the future, and that we are going to not continue to diversify.
So, sci-fi is about imagining new human futures. In LARP, we experiment with identity. Cultural consciousness around gender identity and sexuality is in a huge shift right now. 1 + 1 + 1 equals make your sci-fi and sci-fi LARPs queerer. Fact the 2.
Transhumanism is trans.
Transhumanism is any type of modification to bodies. Trans, human, change the humanity. There's a lot of stuff that's already happening, and people who are doing it the most at the forefront of transhumanism are trans people. We have been modifying and changing our bodies for over 150 years. There are other types of transhuman augmentations that people are doing, like putting magnets in your fingers so you can feel where north is. That's pretty cool. Also, things like Google Glass, which did not really take off, is a more permanent wearable technology. That's transhuman.
Yeah, so when we're looking at who's on the forefront of transhuman technology today, it is predominantly trans people. Trans people throughout history have been on the cutting edge of modifying their bodies to achieve something that they were not born with. When we're looking at other examples, it is any time technology or surgery allows us to move beyond the limitations of the body we were born with. So like pacemakers and insulin pumps are also transhumanist. Medical technology is always doing that.
Queer people are primed to play inhuman and parahuman characters. Exhibit A, Monster Hearts, the tabletop RPG. Monsters are queer. Exhibit B, queer-coded otherness. So Disney villains, they're queer-coded. This has led to a subpopulation of us queers identifying positively with being monsters, others, villains, things like that. It's pretty cool. Exhibit C, my gender is void, robot, 404, gender not found.
As a sci-fi person, this one really gets me. As a sci-fi non-binary person, all of your robots are trans. I'm just telling you this right now.
And lastly, Exhibit D, werewolves and Beauty and the Beast are stories about gay people and the AIDS crisis. For Beauty and the Beast, that is literally a fact.
Thanks, Janelle Monáe. She says robot loving is queer. It's in one of her songs. Check it out. In conclusion, I think LARP is a really important place to be exploring the queerness of sci-fi, pretty specifically because LARP is unlike other types of representation. It's very hard for any kind of marginalized person to go find an image of yourself in media, right? It's like, especially if you have overlaps in marginalization, you're like, oh, I identify with that part of this character, but not that part. And trying to find someone that represents you as a whole is almost impossible. LARP allows us to represent ourselves in stories that we can't possibly realize in real life. playing a queer metaphor with a queer body is inherently more radical than seeing like a non-binary robot on a TV show. Being able to embody that as an actual queer person is inherently empowering.
So, we're talking a lot about like gender and sexuality stuff and Event Horizon, the sci-fi LARP that we do. We don't put in any genders or sexualities or romantic identities into our characters. We don't need to write it in to make a game that is open for people to experiment with these things and have different experiences. Instead, we design for that openness in our world background. We make it very clear that there are lots of different pronouns. They, them is the assumed. We have, for all our 6 different planets, here's what's up with gender, sexuality, and romance, and the differences between them. And we also, we are non-binary. All of the founders of Event Horizon are non-binary. We are queer. We happen to have a quite queer player base. So when you come to the actual place and the play community, by the people who are there, there is room and acceptance for trying out these different things, and that can be a reality that not many people have in their analog lives. Like, most of our friends are not cishet, and it's awesome, but a lot of people don't have that, and then they can come to this place to see that that can be possible.
Also, when you're looking at LARP, it gives people it gives people a place to explore these things or just embody the things that they're already doing in their real life in a setting that doesn't have judgment around them. Sometimes you do want to play with real world, like homophobia in your game, but also sometimes you really don't. Sometimes you want to enter a space where you don't have to deal with that at all for a couple days. And that can be a super powerful experience. And you can, do experiential design so that even if it's not a focus of your game, you can make your game more accessible to queer people.
So this kind of thing extends beyond just the queer identity. That's what we are able to and want to facilitate. There are other identities that we personally are not equipped to do this kind of facilitation around at this point. We're going to bring other people to help do that. So something to think about is, even if you're not doing a science fiction LARP, even if you're not doing a LARP that wants to focus on these things, what are you designing for in your experience? And who are you designing for in your experience? And what are you unconsciously designing for that might be an idea of what is normal right now that maybe doesn't have to be and maybe won't be in the future? So just something to think about.
So in conclusion, make your sci-fi gay luxury space communism?
Oh yeah, come to the luxury gay space communism with us.
Yes.